The hum of a diesel engine, the endless stretch of asphalt, and the sight of city skylines fading into dusty highways. This was the life of Jake Thompson, a long-haul truck driver from Kansas. For nearly 20 years, Jake had driven across America, delivering goods from coast to coast. He worked long hours, often pulling 12 to 14-hour shifts, living off gas station sandwiches and catching sleep in the cramped sleeper cab of his rig. Jake wasn't born into wealth. His father was a factory worker, his mother a part-time cashier at the local grocery store. College wasn't an option, he barely scraped by in high school. But Jake was a hard worker. He got his CDL at 20 and started trucking, figuring he'd spend his life behind the wheel like so many others. But there was something different about Jake. While most truckers spent their free time at rest stops chatting, playing cards, or watching TV in diners, Jake had a secret hobby. He devoured books about investing. It all started when he was 21. On one of his first cross-country hauls, he stopped at a truck stop in Texas, grabbed a coffee, and browsed a used bookstore. A dusty old book caught his eye, The Intelligent Investor by Benjamin Graham. He had no idea who Graham was, but the title intrigued him. He bought it for $2 and tossed it onto the dashboard, not knowing it would change his life. That night, parked at a rest stop in Tennessee, he opened the book out of boredom. He read about value investing, compound interest, and how ordinary people could build wealth not through luck, but by making smart financial choices over time. By sunrise, Jake was hooked. Over the next few years, he read every investment book he could get his hands on, books by Warren Buffett, Peter Lynch, John Bogle. He listened to financial podcasts while driving, watched YouTube videos about investing strategies, and even tuned into CNBC at truck stops. Most of his fellow drivers thought he was crazy. "Jake, you ain't never gonna be rich on a trucker's salary," they'd laugh. "Just enjoy your paycheck and don't get fancy." But Jake didn't listen. He had a plan. By 25, he made a decision. He was going to retire at 40 with at least $3 million. It sounded impossible. A truck driver earning $50,000 a year? Retiring a millionaire in 15 years? People told him it couldn't be done. But Jake knew something they didn't. He had the power of time and compound interest on his side. And he was about to put his plan into motion. Jake knew that to reach his goal of $3 million by 40, he had to do 3 things. Live below his means, no wasting money on things he didn't need. Maximize his income, work hard, take extra routes, and find ways to earn more. Invest wisely, put every extra dollar into investments that would grow over time. Most truckers Jake knew spent their money as fast as they earned it: newer trucks, fancy gadgets, expensive meals at truck stops, and nights in motels instead of sleeping in their cabs. Jake was different. He lived like a man making half his salary. Instead of eating out, he meal prepped in his truck using a small electric cooker. He slept in his cab whenever possible instead of wasting money on motels. He bought used clothes, drove an old pickup truck, and rented a tiny one-bedroom apartment. While other truckers financed $80,000 rigs, Jake drove an older, well-maintained truck with no debt. Every dollar saved meant more money to invest. Jake wasn't satisfied with just his regular routes. He took extra shifts, volunteered for long-distance hauls, and worked every holiday. By the time he was 27, he was pulling in $80,000 a year, not bad for a trucker with no college degree. But he didn't stop there. Jake found ways to earn passive income on the road. He rented out his apartment while he was away, pocketing an extra $800 a month. He started a small trucking blog on the side, sharing tips for saving money as a driver. It wasn't huge, but over time he started making a few $100s a month from ads. He even bought a used semi-truck, leasing it to another driver, making him an extra $1,500 a month. More income meant more investments. Jake followed one simple rule: invest every spare dollar. At 25, he opened a Roth IRA and started maxing it out every year. At 26, he opened a 401k through his trucking company, taking full advantage of their matching program. But his real wealth-building strategy? Index funds and dividend stocks. 80% of his investments went into low-cost S&P 500 index funds, following the advice of Warren Buffett. 20% went into dividend-paying stocks, which sent him passive income every quarter. Whenever he got a dividend check, he reinvested it. By the time he was 30, Jake had over $400,000 saved. Most truckers were still living paycheck to paycheck. Jake? He was well on his way to retiring in his 30s. But the real magic was just beginning, and Jake was about to make a move that would skyrocket his wealth. By the time Jake hit 30, he had already accomplished more financially than most truckers twice his age. But he wasn't stopping. He understood something most people didn't. Wealth isn't just about earning money, it's about multiplying it. That's when he made a bold decision. Jake had been investing steadily in the stock market, but he knew that to supercharge his wealth, he needed another asset class. So, at 31, Jake took $50,000 from his investments and bought his first rental property, a duplex in a small Midwest town where he frequently made deliveries. The property was a foreclosure deal, and Jake spent his weekends fixing it up himself. He lived in one unit and rented out the other, which completely covered his mortgage. With no housing costs, Jake saved even more money. After 2 years, he refinanced the property, pulled out equity, and bought a second rental, a small single-family home. By 35, Jake owned 4 rental properties that were bringing in over $4,000 a month in passive income. And that wasn't even the biggest move he made. At 36, something happened that terrified most investors: a market crash. Stock prices plummeted. People panicked. News anchors screamed about financial doom. But Jake? He had been waiting for this moment. While others sold in fear, Jake bought in bulk. He used his trucking income, his rental property cash flow, and even refinanced one of his homes to dump every dollar into the market at rock-bottom prices. He scooped up cheap index funds, undervalued dividend stocks, and even shares of solid companies that were temporarily down. And then he waited. Over the next few years, the market roared back, and Jake's investments exploded. By 38, his net worth crossed $2 million. By 39, Jake had $3 million in investments. His rental properties brought in over $5,000 a month. His stock dividends paid him another $2,500 monthly. He had done it. At 40, Jake turned in his keys, parked his truck for the last time, and walked away from trucking forever. No more long nights on the highway. No more eating microwaved meals in a sleeper cab. He was financially free. But there was still one thing left to do. Jake had done the impossible. He had retired at 40 years old with $3 million in investments. But now, with no job to wake up to, he faced a new challenge. What do you do when you're free? Most of his life had been spent behind the wheel of an 18-wheeler crisscrossing America. Now, the open road was behind him and an entirely new journey lay ahead. At first, Jake did what any newly retired person would do: he traveled. But unlike his trucking days, this time it was on his own terms. He took a month-long road trip along the West Coast, except instead of sleeping in a truck stop, he stayed in beautiful Airbnb rentals and hiked scenic national parks. He flew to Europe for the first time, something he never thought he'd do, and spent 3 months exploring places like Italy, Germany, and Spain. He bought himself a classic Chevy pickup, the kind he had always dreamed of owning but never let himself splurge on. For the first year, he lived purely off his dividends and rental income, never touching his investments. But after a while, he started feeling restless. Retirement wasn't just about quitting work. It was about doing what mattered. That's when Jake decided to give back. Jake remembered how many truckers laughed at him when he first started investing. They didn't believe that a blue-collar worker could build real wealth. Now, sitting on $3 million, Jake wanted to change that mindset. He started a YouTube channel and podcast called The Millionaire Trucker, where he shared everything he had learned. How to invest as a working-class person. How to live below your means without sacrificing happiness. How to build passive income and retire early. His message exploded. Jake had reached his financial goals and retired at 40. But what came next was even more surprising. His YouTube channel, The Millionaire Trucker, had become more than just a side hobby. It was now a movement. Truckers, blue-collar workers, and everyday Americans were changing their financial lives because of his advice. People started messaging him daily. Jake, I paid off my debt because of your videos. I just opened my first Roth IRA. Why didn't they teach this in school? I stopped wasting money on dumb stuff and started investing. Thank you. He had started as a simple trucker looking for a way out of the grind. And now he was inspiring thousands to follow his path. But Jake wasn't done. By 42. His investments had grown to $4.2 million. Without him working a single traditional job. His stock portfolio had ballooned thanks to compound interest and continued dividend reinvestments. His real estate portfolio had expanded. He now owned 8 rental properties, generating $10,000 a month in passive income. His YouTube channel, books, and courses had turned into a steady stream of online revenue. Jake had done something most people only dreamed of. He had turned his financial knowledge into generational wealth. At 45. Jake made the biggest move of his life. He started a nonprofit aimed at teaching financial literacy to blue-collar workers. He traveled the country giving free workshops at trucking schools, community colleges, and union halls, showing working-class Americans how to invest, save, and build wealth. He was no longer just a trucker. He was a financial freedom mentor, helping thousands break free from the paycheck-to-paycheck cycle. One day, at 50 years old, Jake took a trip down memory lane. He climbed back into an 18-wheeler, not because he had to, but because he wanted to. He drove one last long-haul trip, crossing from New York to California. Along the way, he stopped at truck stops, talking to drivers, handing out free copies of his book, and sharing his story. When he reached the West Coast, he stepped out of the truck, looked at the sunset, and smiled. He had done it. A truck driver, once told he'd never be rich, had built a multi-million-dollar empire through discipline, investing, and smart financial choices. And the best part? His journey wasn't just about him anymore. It was about everyone who followed his path and changed their own futures. Jake Thompson wasn't just a truck driver anymore. He was proof that anyone, no matter where they start, can achieve financial freedom with the right mindset, the right strategy, and the determination to keep going.